The deep space sensors of the Galactic Empire were never silent, but most of the time they only picked up drifting rocks, old signals from forgotten colonies, or the quiet hum of ships moving along normal trade routes. That day was different. A strange pattern appeared on the main display, a cluster of signals coming from a region of space that usually held nothing but empty darkness. The first technician who noticed it frowned and thought the system was malfunctioning. The readings were too strong for anything natural and too organized to be an accident. He checked the settings twice and 3 times, but the signals stayed exactly the same. When he called his supervisor, the older officer also believed it must be a glitch, because nothing in the Imperial records showed a fleet of this size moving through that lonely part of the galaxy. But the pattern repeated again and again, each time more clear. The signals came in tight groups, almost like the heartbeat of a giant creature, steady and powerful. Soon more officers gathered around the screens, whispering and trying to understand what they were seeing. They increased the scan range, adjusted the filters, and replayed the raw data. It was the same no matter what they did. A fleet was moving, and it was moving fast. The Empire had long believed it knew every major power in this part of the galaxy. But this fleet belonged to none of them. A message was sent to the Imperial Council, and before long the entire station was placed on high alert. Small scout ships were launched with orders to stay hidden and observe from a safe distance. The scouts returned later with reports, and the crews looked shaken, almost unable to believe what they had witnessed. The fleet was real. The ships were real. And the flag painted on their hulls was a symbol recorded only once in Imperial history books, in a small footnote about a young species far across the stars. The word the scouts repeated again and again was humans. The Empire had never taken humans seriously. Their home system was quiet and far from important trade paths. Their colonies were few, and their voice in the galactic community was small. Many Imperial commanders even joked that humans were harmless explorers who built ships that looked like flying metal boxes. But the fleet coming toward Imperial space was nothing like those stories. These ships were dense with armor, shaped for speed and strength, and moving in a formation so clean that even Imperial captains would be impressed. The council members gathered in a tall, circular chamber where the walls showed data from every corner of the Empire. All eyes were focused on the image of the human Armada, still days away, but already causing unease. The first reports said that the number of ships was far beyond anything the humans should be capable of building. The fleet looked like the work of a major power, not a young species with only a few centuries of space travel. The council began to argue. Some believed the humans had found old alien technology and learned how to copy it. Others thought the humans had formed a secret alliance with powerful factions. A few even whispered that the fleet might not belong to humans at all, and the symbols on the ships were only meant to mislead the Empire. While the council debated, more scans came in. The reports showed human communication patterns that were strange and difficult to decode. The humans were using fast, flexible networks that shifted from channel to channel in a way the Empire had never seen. Their smaller ships seemed to work like parts of one large machine, sharing data instantly, even when far apart. What worried the Empire most was the way the Armada held its formation. No drifting, no mistakes, no wasted movement. It looked like a force trained for a serious purpose. Curiosity soon turned into quiet fear. The Empire had faced other powers before, but none had appeared so suddenly or so silently. Normally, a rising species made noise for years, sending traders, diplomats, or explorers across the stars. Humans had done small things like that, but nothing that suggested they could build something this large. The Empire began to suspect that it had been watching humans with the wrong eyes for a long time. Investigators were sent to gather every piece of human history available. Old reports showed that humans advanced quickly in technology compared to many older species. They had moved from their home planet to building colonies in a short time. They suffered through disasters that might have destroyed weaker civilizations, yet they rebuilt and kept moving. Their scientists worked fast, and their engineers were known for solving problems in creative ways. The Empire had always thought humans simply rushed things, but now it saw the pattern differently. Humans did not rush. They adapted. They changed. They improved. During this time, the fleet kept coming closer. Imperial ships were placed in defensive positions along the border. Commanders practiced possible battle strategies, but none of them felt confident. The human ships were smaller, but they were built with heavy armor and seemed to ignore many common weaknesses. The Empire tried to guess what humans wanted, but there was no message, no warning, no introduction. Only silence and that steady, unstoppable movement toward Imperial space. Rumors spread through military bases and civilian stations. People whispered that the Empire had angered the humans somehow. Others whispered that humans had decided to expand, and they would not stop until they controlled the entire galaxy. Some even said the humans had discovered a way to grow stronger during war, and their fleet was built to handle battles no other species could survive. Fear traveled faster than the ships themselves. When the human fleet finally reached the outer region of Imperial territory, the Empire prepared for the first direct contact. A line of Imperial warships positioned themselves in a wide arc, shining with blue and gold lights that signaled authority. Their captains practiced their commands again and again, trying to sound calm and strong. No one wanted to show fear, even though many felt it. The Empire was ready to demand answers, but it also kept its weapons charged. The humans entered this area without slowing down. Their formation tightened slightly, and their scans moved across the Imperial ships like quiet whispers. When they came close enough, the Empire sent a message on all official channels. A calm voice spoke, asking the humans to identify themselves and explain their purpose. For a long moment, there was no reply, only the sound of static. Imperial officers held their breath, waiting for a sign that could decide the future. At last a message came. It was short and respectful. The humans said they were passing through the region and wished to avoid conflict. They gave no threats, no display of force, and no attempt to intimidate. The Empire felt confused. They had expected bold demands or warnings. Instead, they heard simple words spoken in a steady, determined tone. But the fleet did not change direction, and the Empire still did not know the true reason behind its size or mission. The Imperial Council felt trapped between fear and curiosity. They could not attack without understanding the danger, but they also could not ignore a fleet this large moving so close to their worlds. Every eye in the Empire was watching this moment, waiting for the next step. The humans sent no further messages. Their ships continued forward, engines glowing softly like distant stars. The Empire realized that whatever came next would shape their relationship with humans for many years. The first contact had begun, but the real story behind the human armada was still hidden, waiting to be discovered. The fear inside the Galactic Empire grew quietly at first, like a small uneasy feeling in the back of everyone's mind. But soon it spread through every level of command. More reports kept arriving from the border regions, and each one made the Empire more nervous. Officers who had never shown fear in their lives now spoke in lower voices, as if the human fleet could somehow hear them through space. Commanders who once joked about humans now avoided the topic, because nothing about the approaching armada looked small or harmless. The new scans revealed more details. The human ships were built in a way the Empire had never seen before. They were compact and heavy, like moving fortresses. They had no unnecessary decorations or bright colors. Everything about them looked practical and strong, as if each ship had been shaped by years of real struggle. They also traveled with surprising speed. Most fleets needed complex support structures to move long distances, but the humans seemed to manage it with ease. Their engines shone with a stable glow that suggested high-level engineering, not something a young species should have mastered. The strangest thing was the way their communication network worked. Imperial analysts tried to study the signals shared between human ships, but the messages shifted from one frequency to another too quickly. It almost looked like human ships were talking to each other through a living system that changed shape every second. It was impossible to predict, and that made the Empire feel even more uneasy. The Empire liked control. It liked knowing how other fleets worked. But this human system followed no familiar pattern. Meetings were now held daily inside the council chamber. The chamber was always bright and calm, but now it felt heavy with worry. Council members argued among themselves, and their voices echoed off the tall walls. Some believed humans had been hiding their true power for years. Others thought they were rushing toward an unknown danger and had prepared a massive fleet to face it. A few believed the humans wanted to expand aggressively, and the Empire should prepare for the worst. No one had clear answers. The Council ordered a detailed investigation into everything known about humans. Old files were opened, scanned, and organized. Teams read through old reports from explorers, traders, and diplomats. Slowly, a clearer picture of human history formed. Humans had grown too fast, some said. They had moved from basic machines to advanced ships in a remarkably short time. They had developed new tools and ideas at a pace that confused even the smartest. Imperial scientists as the Empire reviewed this history, they noticed something important. Whenever humans faced a serious challenge, natural disasters, conflicts, or unexpected problems, they changed quickly and worked together. They rebuilt stronger each time. Instead of stopping or slowing down, humans improved under pressure. It was not luck. It was part of who they were. The more the Empire studied them, the more they realized the human armada was not a sudden effort. It was the result of many years of constant adaptation. This discovery frightened the Empire. A species that learned fast was dangerous. A species that grew stronger during hard times was even more dangerous. And a species that could hide its progress until the right moment was something the Empire did not know how to handle. Meanwhile, the human armada continued its steady movement toward Imperial territory. Every time the Empire expected them to slow down, the humans kept going. Every time they thought the humans might send a message, they remained silent. Their silence felt louder than any threat. It made the Empire imagine the worst possibilities. Some civilians started to worry, too. News channels showed brief updates, and people gathered in public stations, talking in worried tones. Even though official announcements described the situation as under control, the people knew something was wrong. They could sense the tension. They could see the worried expressions on their leaders' faces. Many wondered why humans would bring such a huge fleet so close to Imperial space dock at military bases. Things were not any calmer. Soldiers trained harder, and officers checked their ships again and again. Everything needed to be perfect in case they had to face the human armada. Engineers worked day and night, upgrading shields and engines. Even small scout pilots felt the pressure. They were told to stay alert at all times. No one knew what would happen once the humans arrived. One of the biggest shocks came from the updated fleet count. The Empire originally believed the human fleet had hundreds of ships, which was already surprising. But after improving the scan range, the number increased sharply. There were far more ships than expected. Rows and rows of them moved in silent formation, each one synchronized with the others. The formation stayed tight, like a single living creature moving with calm purpose. Imperial admirals stared at the updated data in disbelief. How could humans build so many ships? They whispered to each other. The Empire had records showing the size of human colonies, their population, and their known resources. None of it made sense when compared to the Armada's size. There were only two possibilities. Either humans had resources the Empire did not know about, or humans had developed new methods of building ships that were far more efficient than anything the Empire used. Both answers were alarming. The Empire tried sending a few messages to the human fleet, but no reply came. It was not rude silence, it felt intentional, as if the humans were focused on something far more important than simple communication. This confusion made the Empire even more anxious. They needed answers. They needed a reason to believe the fleet was not hostile. But getting no response left them with nothing but fear. At the highest level of command, some leaders pushed for a strong show of force. They wanted to position warships directly in front of the human fleet to send a message. Others warned against this. They said it could cause panic or even start a conflict by mistake. After long discussions, the Empire agreed to prepare a controlled, defensive line, strong enough to protect their borders, but not aggressive enough to provoke a fight. On the day the defensive line was activated, tension spread through every control room. Screens showed Imperial warships arranging themselves in a curved formation, with bright markers indicating their shield strength and weapon range. Officers spoke in calm tones, but their voices carried hidden stress. No one wanted to be responsible for making the wrong decision. As the human fleet came closer, the Empire's fear reached its peak. The Armada moved through space like a great storm, quiet but impossible to ignore. The Empire's largest telescopes captured clear images. Human ships were designed differently than anything in Imperial space. They had thick hulls and small glowing windows. They carried large engines, but no fragile wings or open components. Everything was protected, sealed, and secure. It was the design of a species that expected danger. A species that built for survival. A species that did not trust the galaxy to be kind. Some Imperial scientists began to wonder if humans had faced something terrible in their past. Maybe that was why they built such strong ships. Maybe they were running from something. But these were only guesses, and the Empire needed facts, not theories. The human fleet kept moving, steady and silent. The Empire waited, and every passing hour felt like a heavy weight on their shoulders. Then, when the humans crossed the last empty region before reaching Imperial space, something unexpected happened. The humans finally replied. It was not a long message. It did not explain much. It simply stated that the humans wished no conflict and wanted safe passage. The message was calm, direct, and respectful. There were no threats hidden inside it. No sign of fear or aggression. Just simple words. Yet the Empire could not relax. Not completely. Why bring such a huge armada if they meant peace? Why stay silent for so long? Why travel in a formation that looked almost like a war fleet? The Empire ended the day with more questions than answers. The fear did not disappear. It only changed shape, turning into curiosity mixed with caution. And as the human fleet continued its slow approach, the Empire understood that the real explanation, the true reason behind the Armada, was still ahead, waiting to be revealed in a way no one expected. The Imperial Council could not stop thinking about the humans. Even after the first messages came, the fleet continued its slow, deliberate approach, and no one in the Empire could ignore it. Every report brought more confusion. Every scan revealed new details that challenged everything the Empire thought it knew about this young species. Scholars and military strategists were called to the chamber to present everything they had learned about human history, culture, and technology. It was a long process, and every discovery made the Council more uneasy. What they discovered first was the pace of human growth. Humans had started as a small species on a quiet planet, far from the center of galactic trade. Their early colonies were modest, and their technology was primitive by imperial standards. Yet within a few centuries, they had spread across nearby. Systems, building ships, stations, and communication networks faster than any other species had managed in such a short time. There were periods of collapse, wars, natural disasters, and internal conflicts, but humans always recovered. They rebuilt stronger, faster, and smarter each time. The Council found records of countless disasters that would have destroyed other civilizations. Massive storms, deadly plagues, civil unrest, and failed experiments did not end humanity. Instead, humans studied every failure and learned from it. This adaptability amazed the imperial historians. Humans did not just survive, they grew stronger in the face of adversity. Even small colonies had systems designed to respond to crises, and engineers were trained to improvise solutions when plans failed. Military analysts were equally impressed and worried. Unlike most species, humans did not rely on enormous numbers or sheer size. They focused on efficiency, strategy, and resilience. Their fleets were smaller but extremely effective. Ships could survive heavy damage, crews adapted quickly, and the chain of command worked even under extreme stress. These were not mistakes or luck. They were the results of careful planning and a culture that valued endurance, courage, and quick thinking. The Empire had assumed humans were inexperienced and disorganized, but now the truth was becoming clear. Humans were disciplined in unexpected ways. Their strength was not in advanced weapons alone, but in their ability to endure, adapt, and coordinate under pressure. Each new piece of data the Empire reviewed painted a picture of a species that had been underestimated for generations. The Council also learned about human cooperation. Humans were fiercely independent, but also capable of great teamwork. Communities could unite quickly when facing a threat, pooling knowledge and resources in ways that imperial species rarely matched. Their colonies shared information freely, their scientists collaborated across worlds, and their fleets operated like a single organism. This combination of independence and unity gave humans an advantage that the Empire had never fully understood. Some of the military leaders became uneasy because the human armada was not just large, it was unusually organized. Ships moved with precision, as if every captain knew the movements of others without direct orders. Even when separated, the fleet maintained its formation. Sensors indicated a level of coordination that the Empire had only seen in its most experienced war fleets, and humans were doing it without the same technology or history. Civilian advisors studied human culture and social structure. They discovered that humans valued courage, curiosity, and persistence. Leaders emerged based on merit rather than birthright or political power, and communities encouraged innovation. Mistakes were not punished harshly. They were analyzed, studied, and used to improve the next attempt. This approach created a species that learned quickly and improved constantly. Some council members argued that humans might be hiding alien assistance. Perhaps they had discovered lost technology or received help from an unknown power. Others suggested that humans had developed methods of rapid construction and adaptation that other species could not understand. The truth, it seemed, was a combination of both ingenuity and survival instinct. Humans had grown not through shortcuts, but through constant effort and learning from hardship. As the Empire studied humans, unease spread through the population. Military officers whispered in corridors about the human problem. Traders worried about supply lines being disrupted if humans decided to act aggressively. Scientists debated whether human technology had undiscovered potential and whether ignoring it could be fatal. Fear of the unknown became a quiet but constant companion in imperial society. Meanwhile, the human fleet continued to move forward. Imperial scouts reported that the Armada showed no signs of aggression. Ships did not fire weapons, did not change formation to threaten, and maintained a calm, steady approach. The humans' behavior was deliberate and controlled, but it did not provide reassurance. The Empire had never faced a fleet of this size, or with this unusual level of coordination and adaptability. In the Council, arguments grew heated. Some leaders insisted on preparing for war, fearing humans might strike unexpectedly. Others argued for diplomacy, believing the fleet's calm behavior suggested they were not here to conquer. The debate continued for hours. Every argument referenced a growing understanding of human history and behavior. What made them strong also made them unpredictable. The Empire had no prior experience dealing with a species like this. Some council members suggested that the human strength might lie in their moral values rather than their technology. Unlike most species, humans were willing to risk their own lives to protect others, and they placed a high value on life and cooperation. Military leaders found this disturbing. In a battle, a species willing to endure pain, loss, and danger for a cause could never be easily defeated. This ethical courage, combined with rapid adaptation, made humans frightening in a way the Empire could not prepare for. At the same time, human history revealed resilience in the face of existential threats. Ancient records spoke of global disasters, wars between colonies, and environmental collapse. Each time, humans rebuilt societies, learned new lessons, and emerged stronger. Imperial analysts began to see the Armada as the product of these experiences. The humans had survived everything, and this fleet was the culmination of their learning and adaptation. As the humans approached Imperial space, the Council began to realize something fundamental. The Armada's size, organization, and determination were not signs of aggression. They were signs of preparation, resilience, and experience. Humans were not reckless or chaotic. They were deliberate and capable. The Empire had spent decades underestimating them, and now it had to face the truth. Imperial officers started to change tactics. Instead of preparing only for attack, they began to study human behavior more closely. Observers noted the fleet's patterns, its communication methods, and the way it moved in formation. Each detail revealed a species that had learned from countless challenges, a species that valued survival, cooperation, and adaptability above all else. The more the Empire learned, the more it realized its fear came from misunderstanding. Humans were not aggressive by nature. They were cautious, deliberate, and capable. Their strength was built on experience, resilience, and ethical determination. This insight slowly began to reshape Imperial strategy. Instead of focusing purely on defense, commanders started to consider diplomacy and observation. The humans' actions suggested they could be allies or at least partners if approached correctly. Yet uncertainty remained. The Empire did not know the humans' ultimate goal. The fleet's size alone suggested they were prepared for large-scale challenges. But for what purpose? Were they seeking resources, territory, or simply survival? No one could be certain, and that uncertainty fueled both fear and fascination. As scouts returned with closer images of the Armada, the Council could see human ships in detail for the first time. They were functional, strong, and compact. Each ship seemed designed to survive damage and continue operating. The fleet's formation maintained perfect alignment over vast distances. Sensors suggested human crews were highly trained and disciplined, able to respond to emergencies without hesitation. By the end of the day, the Council reached a reluctant conclusion. Humans were not only capable, they were extraordinary. They had survived hardships that would have destroyed other civilizations, adapted faster than anyone expected, and built a fleet that combined strength, speed, and efficiency. Their ethical values made them unpredictable in war, yet their discipline ensured they could act decisively. The Empire faced a species it had underestimated for generations. As the human Armada drew closer, Imperial leaders realized the next phase of contact would be critical. They needed to understand humans not as a threat to conquer or destroy, but as a species with unique capabilities and motivations. The Empire could no longer rely on old assumptions. To survive and perhaps to thrive, it would have to learn from the humans, observe them closely, and prepare for the unexpected. The Council ended the session with quiet determination. Everyone knew that the humans' arrival would change the Empire forever. Fear had been replaced by cautious respect, mixed with a sense of urgency. The human armada was no longer a distant rumor or a story in old records. It was real, and it was here. The Empire could not afford mistakes. Every decision, every observation, and every action from this moment onward would define the relationship between humans and the Galactic Empire for decades, if not centuries. The human fleet, still moving steadily through the void of space, remained calm, deliberate, and powerful. Its purpose was still unknown. Its strength was undeniable, and the Empire could no longer deny that it had underestimated a species that had grown in silence, learned from every challenge, and built an armada capable of changing the balance of the galaxy. The first steps toward understanding had begun. But the true story of the human armada, the reason for its existence, the lessons of its history, and the courage of its people, was still waiting to be revealed. The day finally arrived when the human armada entered the outer regions of Imperial space. Imperial commanders had prepared for months, moving warships into defensive positions along the border. They believed that humans might finally reveal their intentions, whether peaceful or hostile. The largest warships of the Empire formed a wide arc, shields charged, weapons ready, and sensors scanning every inch of space. Yet even as the humans approached, nothing about them suggested aggression. The first scouts reported in quickly. The human fleet moved with perfect discipline, each ship holding its position with quiet precision. There were no reckless maneuvers, no sudden bursts of speed to intimidate, and no signs of provocation. Yet the Imperial crews could not shake their unease. The humans were numerous, organized, and their ships seemed almost indestructible. Every detail suggested that they were prepared for anything, even a war that could destroy entire star systems. Imperial commanders sent a formal message to the human armada, requesting identification and the purpose of their presence. The message echoed through communication channels, calm but firm, carrying the weight of Imperial authority. For a long moment, silence followed. The human fleet did not respond immediately. Some officers began to sweat, imagining the worst-case scenarios. Others worried that a misstep could spark an accidental battle. When the humans finally replied, it was not with threats or demands. They acknowledged the presence of Imperial forces and stated clearly that they meant no harm. Their message was brief, respectful, and carefully measured. The calm tone surprised the Imperial officers. This was not a species attempting to challenge the Empire. It was a species moving with a purpose that no one yet understood. Despite the peaceful message, tension remained high. The Imperial fleet maintained its defensive formation, unsure whether to advance, retreat, or wait. Every move was calculated. Every command was deliberate. The human ships continued to advance, but they did so without changing formation, maintaining perfect distance between each vessel. The sight of hundreds of ships moving as one entity was both beautiful and terrifying. Imperial crews had never seen anything like it. The first encounter revealed more about human technology than the Empire had anticipated. Their ships had advanced sensor systems capable of detecting Imperial weapons before they were activated. They moved with precision that suggested advanced navigation and coordination. The engines emitted a soft glow, stable and efficient, unlike anything the Imperial engineers had ever worked with. Each ship seemed built to withstand immense stress, and the humans operated them with confidence and calm. Commanders in the Imperial Council debated what to do next. Some urged a show of force, believing the human fleet could be tested by a small display of firepower. Others warned that such an action could provoke hostility, and no one could predict the humans' response. After hours of deliberation, the Council agreed on a cautious approach. They would maintain the defensive formation, avoid aggression, and continue observing the human fleet closely. As the fleets drew closer, Imperial observers noticed something unusual. The humans did not engage their weapons, yet their sensors continuously scanned the Imperial ships. It was as if they were gathering information without threatening or attacking. The human commanders appeared to communicate instantly across long distances, adjusting formations and speeds with a fluidity that made Imperial captains wonder if they were dealing with a single mind controlling hundreds of ships. Despite the calm behavior, a small misunderstanding almost escalated into conflict. An Imperial ship activated its defensive weapons to test sensor responses. The human fleet detected the activation instantly. Instead of retaliating, they deactivated their own weapons in a synchronized maneuver, signaling clearly that they had no hostile intentions. Imperial officers were stunned. These humans had the ability to attack, but chose restraint. Their control, discipline, and judgment were unlike anything the Empire had faced before. The first moments of direct observation taught the Empire valuable lessons. Human ships were not only strong and fast, they were designed for resilience. Crews were trained to remain composed under pressure, and command systems were built for clarity and speed. The human fleet acted as a single, cohesive unit, yet allowed individual ships to make rapid decisions when needed. This combination of coordination and independence was both impressive and intimidating. As the day passed, Imperial crews began to realize that fear alone could not define their understanding of humans. They observed how the fleet maintained balance, how ships adjusted to avoid collisions, and how smaller vessels moved with agility alongside larger ones. The humans demonstrated a mastery of space navigation and fleet management that the Empire had never seen before. It became clear that the Armada's strength was not just in numbers or armor, it was in the intelligence, adaptability, and training of the people who commanded the ships. In council chambers, scholars presented detailed analysis. They explained that human coordination came from experience with crisis and hardship. Humans had learned to make quick decisions without chaos, to follow principles while remaining flexible, and to value collective success without sacrificing individual initiative. This insight startled Imperial leaders. Humans were not simply following orders, they were applying judgment, strategy, and moral reasoning on a massive scale. The more the Empire observed, the more it realized its assumptions about humans had been wrong. They were not a reckless species, nor were they primitive. They were precise, disciplined, and highly adaptive. They did not provoke or bully, yet they could survive and thrive in situations that would have destroyed other civilizations. This combination of restraint, intelligence, and strength challenged everything the Empire believed about military power. Throughout the observation, Imperial crews also noted the humans' careful movements. Every adjustment in the fleet seemed deliberate, yet effortless. Humans avoided unnecessary risk, but did not hesitate when action was required. It was clear that their training focused on understanding consequences and minimizing harm, both to themselves and others. This ethical dimension of their strategy puzzled the Empire. Other species often relied purely on force and intimidation. Humans relied on skill, coordination, and judgment. By the end of the day, Imperial commanders had learned several key truths. Humans could not be underestimated. Their ships were advanced, resilient, and carefully constructed. Their fleets moved with precision that suggested a deep understanding of space, coordination, and strategy. And most importantly, their actions revealed a species that valued control, ethics, and decision-making over brute strength. Despite these insights, uncertainty remained. The Empire did not know why the human Armada had entered Imperial space. Were they exploring, seeking resources, or pursuing another purpose entirely? The calm behavior of the humans suggested peace, but their immense strength and coordination warned the Empire that assumptions could be dangerous. Every officer understood that a single mistake could have far-reaching consequences. The humans continued their steady approach, neither rushing nor stopping. Imperial crews watched, learned, and began to respect their discipline. Analysts noted that humans seemed to respond to potential threats with restraint and precision, rather than panic or aggression. Every movement of the Armada reflected thought, strategy, and self-control. The Empire began to see that human strength was not only physical or technological, it was also moral and intellectual. By the time the human fleet had moved fully into the outer sectors, the Imperial Council convened again. They acknowledged that their fear had been based on misunderstanding. The humans were no longer mysterious aggressors. They were a species with remarkable capability and judgment. The challenge for the Empire now was not whether to attack, but how to interact. Diplomacy, observation, and careful strategy would be necessary to understand the humans, and perhaps even work with them. The first encounter had ended without conflict. Yet it had changed the Empire's perception entirely. Humans were no longer seen as weak, primitive, or insignificant. They were disciplined, capable, and thoughtful. They could fight, but they chose restraint. They could command, but they respected the limits of their actions. This revelation began to shift Imperial planning, strategy, and even culture. As night fell across the observation stations, Imperial officers continued to watch the human Armada. Lights from the human ships glowed softly in the distance, moving steadily like a great river through space. There were no signs of aggression, yet every officer knew the truth. This fleet was extraordinary. The humans had shown the Empire not just their technology, but their character, discipline, and ability to act as one without losing individuality. The day ended with both relief and anticipation. The human Armada had entered Imperial space and demonstrated its strength and restraint. The Empire had learned valuable lessons, but the true purpose of the human fleet remained unknown. Observers realized that the next phase of interaction would reveal more about the humans' mission, their history, and the principles that guided them. The first encounter had been successful, but it was only the beginning. Imperial commanders understood one thing clearly. Humans were not a species to underestimate. Their discipline, intelligence, and moral restraint made them unique. The Armada's presence forced the Empire to reconsider its assumptions, rethink its strategies, and prepare for a future in which humans would play a major role. Every officer, scholar, and leader now knew that the galaxy would never be the same again, and that understanding the human Armada would be one of the most important challenges the Empire had ever faced. The humans continued to move forward, steady and calm, showing no aggression, but signaling that they were prepared for anything. The Empire could only watch, learn, and wait. The true story of the human fleet, the reason for its formation, the depth of its history, and the courage of the people behind it was still ahead, waiting to be revealed. The Imperial Council had watched the human Armada closely for weeks. The fleet had entered Imperial space without incident, maintaining perfect formation and demonstrating extraordinary discipline. The Empire had expected some form of aggression, or at least a show of dominance, but the humans had remained calm, precise, and surprisingly patient. Now the Council faced the biggest question of all. Why was the Armada here? What was its purpose? Reports from scouts and long-range sensors provided fragments of information, but nothing complete. Human ships were equipped with advanced scanning systems, capable of detecting objects and threats at incredible distances. These sensors showed that humans were aware of everything around them, including the Imperial fleet, yet they chose not to act aggressively. Imperial officers could not understand it. A fleet this large, moving with such precision, should have threatened every nearby species. Instead, humans seemed focused on something far away, something unknown. The Council demanded answers. Messages were sent again to the human fleet, this time asking directly for their intentions. Hours passed without reply. Imperial officers grew anxious. They feared that the silence could hide something dangerous, but at the same time, they could see no signs of hostile movement. The humans continued forward, their armada a perfect line of strength and control, moving as if nothing could disturb it. Finally, the humans responded. Their message was calm, clear, and carefully worded. They explained that their fleet was not here to conquer or threaten the Empire. Instead, they had detected a cosmic threat in a distant region, a force or disaster capable of destroying entire worlds if left unchecked. The human armada had been organized to address this threat, to protect those who could not defend themselves, and to evacuate populations at risk. The Empire was stunned. Imperial leaders had assumed humans were preparing for war. They had feared invasion and confrontation. Now they learned that the Armada's true purpose was humanitarian, not aggressive. Humans had prepared a fleet large enough to save millions of lives, and they had traveled across unknown regions of space to fulfill this mission. The Empire realized that its fear had been based on misunderstanding, assumptions, and centuries of underestimating a species that had quietly grown in strength. And Intelligence Council members debated the next steps. Could the humans be trusted? How could the Empire verify that this threat was real? Some members argued for caution, insisting that the fleet should be observed carefully while continuing to maintain defensive positions. Others suggested offering assistance, reasoning that a species capable of such careful planning and moral judgment deserved the benefit of trust. Ultimately, the decision was made to allow safe passage, while continuing observation and preparation for any possible scenario. As the humans moved through Imperial space, officers observed their interactions with one another. Smaller ships assisted larger ones, crews coordinated seamlessly, and every command seemed to be executed with perfect timing. Humans were not only strong, they were organized, compassionate, and attentive to the needs of others. Their efficiency was impressive, but what caught the Empire by surprise was their willingness to act in the interest of others, even strangers. This behavior was almost alien to Imperial commanders, who were used to dominance and hierarchy as the primary motivators of action. Observers began to understand why humans had built such a fleet. It was not just strength in numbers or advanced technology. It was experience, adaptation, and a deep understanding of risk. Humans had faced disasters before and had learned to respond quickly, decisively, and ethically. They built their armada not to intimidate, but to ensure that even the weakest and most vulnerable could survive. Imperial officers were forced to reconsider everything they thought they knew about military power and strategy. Strength alone was not enough. Adaptability, foresight, and moral responsibility made humans formidable in a way the Empire had never encountered. During the journey, humans communicated with scattered species along their route. They provided warnings, guidance, and support to communities at risk. Imperial sensors recorded every action, and the Council members studied these reports with growing respect. Humans were not indiscriminate in their actions. They focused on helping, protecting, and ensuring survival, demonstrating intelligence that went beyond mere tactics. They applied knowledge, foresight, and ethics in every decision. The Empire had faced intelligent species before, but none combined strategic brilliance with moral purpose in such a clear way. The Empire also noticed the resilience of human crews. Even when facing difficult conditions, such as hazardous asteroid fields, energy storms, or weak supply lines, humans adapted instantly. ships shifted positions to protect one another. Crews modified procedures on the fly, and leaders made quick decisions that minimized risk while maintaining progress toward their mission. This combination of adaptability and discipline created a fleet that could survive nearly any obstacle without faltering. The Empire began to see why humans had grown so rapidly. From small colonies to an armada capable of protecting entire populations, as the human armada continued its mission. Imperial officers learned another key lesson. Humans valued life, not only their own, but the lives of others. They had the power to destroy or dominate, but they chose restraint. They prioritized safety, coordination, and survival over aggression. This was completely unlike most other species the Empire had encountered, which often prioritized power, conquest, or territory. The ethical focus of humans was both extraordinary and unsettling. It suggested a species that could act unpredictably in defense of principle, rather than in pursuit of dominance. By the time the Armada reached the outer regions of the threatened zone, Imperial commanders had come to a realization. The fleet's true strength was its people. Not the ships, not the weapons, not the technology alone, but the humans themselves, their experience, adaptability, judgment, and ethical focus. These qualities made the Armada nearly invincible in ways that traditional military planning could not measure. The Empire recognized that humans had turned survival into an art, combining knowledge, skill, and morality into a force that could not be underestimated. Imperial analysts also noted the humans' capacity for rapid decision-making. When unexpected dangers appeared, asteroid fields, debris storms, or environmental hazards, the humans responded immediately, altering their course, adjusting shields, and coordinating with other vessels. They minimized loss while continuing forward, maintaining their ultimate goal. The Empire had never witnessed such efficiency and care combined. Most species reacted slowly or panicked under similar conditions, but humans had learned to act with calm and precision. Throughout the journey, Imperial observers could see the humans focus on purpose. Every action of the fleet, every adjustment, of course, every decision reflected a clear objective: protect, evacuate, and preserve life. The humans were not distracted by politics, prestige, or pride. They acted with clarity, determination, and care. The Empire began to understand that fear had been replaced by respect. Humans were capable of extraordinary acts, but their motives were grounded in ethics and strategy rather than conquest. The human fleet's behavior caused a profound shift in Imperial thinking. Leaders began to question long-held assumptions about power, dominance, and strategy. Strength alone did not define a species. Intelligence alone did not ensure survival. And aggression alone did not determine victory. Humans had combined all three: strength, intelligence, and ethical purpose into a form of power that was unlike anything the Empire had faced. As the humans reached the threatened systems, Imperial observers finally saw the full scope of their mission. Planets at risk were evacuated efficiently. Resources were deployed to stabilize populations. Communication networks warned inhabitants of hazards, and supply convoys ensured that even the smallest colonies could survive. Humans acted quickly, decisively, and with care, confirming everything the Empire had begun to suspect. This Armada was built for protection, not conquest. By the end of the operation, the Empire had learned a valuable lesson. Humans were not a threat to be feared in the traditional sense. Their strength came from resilience, intelligence, coordination, and moral courage. They had built a fleet capable of facing enormous challenges, but they used it to save life rather than destroy. The Empire could no longer think of humans as a minor or insignificant species. Their presence, purpose, and actions demanded recognition, respect, and careful understanding. The first encounters, the observation of their fleets, and the revelation of their true purpose had shifted the Empire's view entirely. Humans were no longer mysterious, frightening outsiders. They were a species capable of extraordinary achievement, guided by discipline, courage, and a moral compass that valued life above all. Imperial officers now realized that working with humans, or at least understanding them, would be critical for the future. As the human armada continued its mission, the Empire understood one clear truth: the fleet's size and power were impressive, but the real force behind it was human determination, experience, and ethical focus. This realization marked the beginning of a new understanding between humans and the Galactic Empire, one that could shape alliances, strategies, and relationships for generations to come. The humans moved forward steadily, calm and deliberate, achieving their mission without aggression, but with undeniable capability. The Empire watched, learned, and began to respect a species that had grown quietly, survived against odds, and now demonstrated a level of coordination, intelligence, and moral purpose the galaxy had never seen before. The human armada had moved through Imperial space with calm precision, and by now the Empire's initial fear had shifted into cautious curiosity. Imperial officers observed every movement, every adjustment, and every coordination between the ships, gradually realizing that the humans were not there to conquer, threaten, or provoke. Instead, they were traveling with purpose, their focus on a distant threat that no one in the Empire had fully understood. What had begun as fear was now slowly turning into respect. The humans' true mission became clear as the Armada reached the outer edges of the dangerous zone. They worked quickly and efficiently, deploying resources to stabilize planets, evacuating populations at risk, and assisting smaller fleets that could not navigate the dangers alone. Imperial observers recorded every move, amazed at the humans' combination of precision, discipline, and moral judgment. They were witnessing a species capable of immense power, yet willing to use it purely to protect others. Imperial commanders began to reassess the assumptions they had made for decades. Humans were no longer seen as small, insignificant, or unorganized. The scale of the Armada, the resilience of its crews, and the intelligence demonstrated in their actions forced the Empire to recognize a species that had been underestimated for far too long. The human Armada was not only strong, but also capable of making decisions guided by ethics and responsibility, a combination that the Empire had never encountered before. As the operation continued, Imperial officers noticed how humans interacted with those they helped. Communication was clear, concise, and polite. Humans explained what they were doing, why they were doing it, and what others could do to remain safe. Supplies were distributed evenly, care was taken to protect civilians, and every decision prioritized survival and efficiency. The humans' moral focus was evident in every action. It became clear that this fleet represented not only technology and strength, but also a philosophy. Power exists to protect, not destroy. The Empire began to see the value of working with humans rather than imposing them. Scholars and military analysts studied their strategies, noting the blend of adaptability and discipline. Humans anticipated problems before they occurred, coordinated across long distances, and maintained composure in crisis. Their fleet functioned as a single unit, yet every ship and crew member could act independently when necessary. This combination of flexibility and cohesion made the human armada remarkably effective. Imperial officers were particularly struck by the humans' willingness to risk themselves to protect others. Smaller ships frequently maneuvered into dangerous zones to shield colonies, while crews on larger vessels coordinated complex maneuvers to prevent loss of life. There was no hesitation, no concern for personal gain. Every action was focused on mission success and the preservation of life. Observing this, many in the Empire felt a mixture of awe and humility. They had assumed the humans were dangerous because of their strength, But the real source of their power lay in their courage and moral determination. The Council realized that the humans' armada was built not for war, but for survival, rescue, and protection. The fleet's size was necessary not for dominance, but to achieve a massive humanitarian goal. Every ship, every crew member, every piece of technology contributed to the safety of others. The Empire had been wrong to fear aggression. The humans were aggressive only in their determination to protect and save. This understanding reshaped the way the Empire approached not just the human armada, but the concept of power itself. Imperial commanders began adjusting their own strategies. Instead of preparing solely for combat, they focused on observation, cooperation, and understanding. Advisors emphasized learning from human methods of coordination, resource distribution, and rapid decision-making. The human fleet became a model of efficiency and ethics combined, and Imperial officers recognized that they could gain much by studying their actions closely. Fear was giving way to respect and even inspiration. As the human fleet continued its mission, Imperial observers noted the meticulous planning behind every move. Humans anticipated environmental hazards, navigational challenges, and even potential threats from unknown species. They adapted instantly when unexpected problems arose, redirecting ships, adjusting formations, and reallocating resources. The Armada's success was a result not only of superior technology, but also of human judgment, experience, and foresight. The Empire could see that human power was rooted in intelligence, applied with purpose. When the Armada finally reached the most threatened systems, the results were clear. Planets were stabilized, populations evacuated, and disasters averted with minimal loss of life. The human crews worked tirelessly, without hesitation, demonstrating a combination of resilience and empathy that left Imperial officers speechless. They were witnessing a species that had mastered not just survival, but the act of preserving life under the harshest conditions. The Council convened once more to discuss the implications. Leaders acknowledged that the humans' motives, discipline, and strength had completely overturned their assumptions. A species once considered minor and insignificant had displayed organizational brilliance, technological skill, and moral focus on a scale that could influence entire regions of the galaxy. It became clear that the human armada was not a threat, but a force of protection, a species capable of enormous influence, because they chose to act with principle and determination. Imperial officers continued to observe as the human fleet prepared to leave the region. There was no fanfare, no celebration, no signals of dominance. They simply completed their mission and began returning to known space. Yet every Imperial ship that had observed them was profoundly changed. Humans were no longer a distant, unknown species. They were a model of efficiency, discipline, courage, and moral clarity. The Empire had learned a fundamental lesson. True strength is measured not only by power or numbers, but by the ability to act with intelligence, courage, and compassion. The first direct interaction between humans and the Empire ended without conflict, but it had left an indelible mark. The human armada's purpose, behavior, and philosophy challenged centuries of Imperial assumptions. Leaders recognized that humans could be allies, partners, or even guides in facing galactic threats, and that underestimating them had been a grave mistake. Fear had transformed into cautious respect, and the Empire began to see humans in a new light. As the fleet disappeared into the distance, Imperial officers and civilians alike reflected on what they had witnessed. Humans had shown that a species could wield immense power while maintaining discipline, moral judgment, and care for others. The Empire understood that the galaxy had changed. A new era of interaction, learning, and potential cooperation had begun, shaped by the actions of a fleet that had moved quietly but decisively through the void. The lessons of the human armada would not be forgotten. The Empire had seen firsthand that strength combined with intelligence, courage, and compassion could achieve results far beyond brute force. Humans had not only completed their mission, they had reshaped the way the Empire understood power, strategy, and ethics. By the time the Armada reached safe regions of known space, the Empire had acknowledged its misjudgment and quietly prepared to embrace a new path. The human fleet, calm and disciplined as ever, continued its journey, leaving behind a galaxy that had been both challenged and inspired. The Empire watched, listened, and learned, realizing that a species that had once been underestimated had proven that courage, intelligence, and ethical determination could change the course of history. And as humans moved forward, the Empire understood that this was only the beginning of a story that would shape the galaxy for generations to come.